well. So.
Right, because this is such a large site and we are sending pretty much all of our runoff to one central location, we wanted to look at some design features to help lessen the impact of that runoff. And what we looked at were green roofs and permeable pavement. The green roof just basically consists of layers of soil and vegetation on top of the buildings that would allow some of the water to soak into the ground instead of going to a gutter system and then eventually to the swale. And we also looked at permeable pavement, which works in a similar fashion. It reduces your total impervious area of the site by allowing some of the stormwater to infiltrate through the pavement and direct it into the ground instead of running off and going to the swale.
Okay, so that's part of really the implementation plan. The first one that I have listed is drainage, and that's the main thing that the engineers worked on, was the biofiltration swale to help me with the site slope, which was important to make sure that all of the water runoff didn't make it to the swale, and also the green roofs and the permeable pavement. Another part of the broad overall concept has to do with parking, because parking is obviously very important in this. I have pretty much at the core of the site is the bioswale, and then it's surrounded by majority of parking, and there's also some underground parking underneath each building. But I really intended to design each of these select parking lots as more than just a parking lot. They're all sunken 3 feet, which comes from a precedent from Mies at a park that he built in, I guess, just east of Detroit. And I really wanted each of these little distinguished parking areas to be more of an outdoor room. They are all surrounded with vegetation, which at the time it's built would be small, but eventually I sort of envision it as making them into little rooms with actually vegetated walls surrounding them. And then also they have permeable pavers, or maybe permeable asphalt you talked about. I would prefer pavers just to sort of give it sort of a unique feeling. And my intention was during the day that each of these little parking lots could be used for parking for all of the buildings and the activities, but on weekends and maybe evenings, they could actually be rented out and they could serve some sort of community or public purpose, or even rented out for private purposes. I was thinking that maybe perhaps in one of these buildings, there could be some sort of recreation hall on the ground floor, rentable space that you could even set up for weddings or festivals or community theater or something like that, and really utilize the space so that it's more than just a parking lot. And then getting a little bit more into architecture, part of the implementation I think that's important for architecture is really utilizing daylighting. And through that I wanted to emphasize using things like louvers, skylights, window walls, and cantilevered floor plates in order to shade the light and let in certain amounts of light at particular times during the day. Also, materiality is an important part of my concept. Materials, the bulk of materials that I use are wood. I kind of envision wood louvers, and the buildings are primarily concrete and glass. And then, like I said, the parking lots are permeable pavers, and then the paths are pavers and also maybe pebbles or crushed stone, and then also a lot of native vegetation. I also want to emphasize the importance of sort of the inside being the natural aspect, and the outside I designed it so that the buildings have a very hard edge condition up against the street front, pretty much all the way around. And then so the design is meant to sort of bring the nature from the inside out and then bring the urban from the outside in. That's also can be seen in sort of the grid that I formed the parking lots in. I kind of envision it as normally where you'd have a street is actually vegetation and trails weaving through it, and then where the parking lots are where the actual urban atmosphere is, and really sort of a weaving type environment that weaves the natural in with the urban landscape. So again, dealing with the buildings, I think the visual connection is very important. And as it was from the start, part of his natural being, I kind of see the fronts of all the buildings. The buildings are only 80 feet wide. They're going to be open floor plans, and they're primarily poured concrete columns and floor plates. And I really like concrete because of its organic feel and how it can be shaped and so forth. And I kind of envision floor plates being pulled out into the environment to provide outdoor spaces and maybe pulled inside to provide larger windows and double height spaces. But the visual connection, like I said, just if you look at the second page, look at pictures 7 and 8. Picture 7 is from the rec center, and I really like that picture because it shows the strong connection outside into the urban. And while you work out, you feel like you're in an urban campus and you can see the buildings around you. And then picture 8 is just a precedent that I used, and instead of looking out into a distinct urban environment, you're looking out into a natural environment. So I really envision when you look inside to the site, it's going to be very natural for the most part. When you look out, it's going to be very urban. So when you're inside the buildings, you get the feeling of both, and you get the feeling of that connectivity. And then break into vegetation, giving you views and actually contact with trees when you're out on them. And then also the terraces and boardwalks. I've designed a boardwalk that follows on both sides the entire length of the swale. And then there's also some boardwalk and trails, and there's also some trails in that meander through the vegetated space that is in between the parking lots. And then again, the outdoor rooms and the vegetated grid are another part of the physical connectivity.